struggling with your faith, or you've lost your faith, or you haven't heard of the gospel, I highly recommend you watch this video. To me, the fact that Jesus had over 500 plus eyewitnesses, including his disciples, who watched him resurrect from the dead and then ascend into heaven, tells me a lot. Let me explain why. Because these weren't just real people making a claim and then moving on with their lives. These were real people who lived in history. We have strong historical evidence that Jesus' disciples existed and that they preached his resurrection and that they were persecuted because of it. Some of them wrote books of the Bible and they dedicated the rest of their lives to preaching the gospel. They faced decades of persecutions, beatings, social exile, poverty, prison, being stoned, and all kinds of horrible suffering. But they never stopped preaching Christ. And I'm not just talking about one or two of Jesus' disciples, but according to early Christian tradition, 10 of Jesus' disciples were brutally murdered. Many after enduring decades of persecution and torture. Others gave up their freedom, their reputations, relationships, and ultimately their lives because they were so sure of what they had seen that they would not deny it. And I'm talking about crucifixions, horrific beatings, being skinned alive, flogged, whipped, all these brutal things, the list goes on. And these people were so certain that Jesus truly rose from the dead and ascended into heaven that they were willing to endure all that rather than deny him. And that says a lot to me, because if they had knowingly made this whole thing up, they would have been choosing to die for a lie they knew was false. Like, people might die for something they sincerely believe is true, even if they're mistaken, but it's incredibly difficult to explain why so many people would willingly endure torture and execution for something they themselves knew they had invented. If your life is on the line, most people would just be willing to admit it was a lie to save themselves. But they didn't. They stood firm. Their faith was so strong because they didn't just believe something. They were convinced of what they had seen. All because they were certain that what they had seen was true. They were certain that Christ was the way.